James Stirling, he, him pronouns, is a lifelong UU and a queer man. He has a passion for science and for reading research papers on topics outside of his field that he can't fully understand. James enjoys sharing his experiences as a queer man and educating people about the queer community, and he is my son. Please welcome James.
Hi. So our service today is going to be largely about the Transgender Day of Remembrance, but hopefully we'll be celebrating it in a bit of a different way today. The Transgender Day of Remembrance is coming up next week on November 20th, and I'm going to give you a little statement about what the Transgender Day of Remembrance is from the organization GLAD that does a lot of queer advocacy and helps keep track of things like this. So, the Transgender Day of Remembrance was started in 1999 by transgender activist Gwendolyn Ann Smith as a vigil to honor the memory of Rita Hester, a transgender woman who was killed in 1998. The vigil commemorated all the transgender people lost to violence since Rita Hester's death, and began an important tradition that has become the annual Transgender Day of Remembrance, celebrated every year on November 20th. So that vigil that we talked about in the announcements, that is the vigil in Corpus Christi, I believe with the Coastal Bend Wellness Center, for the people that we've lost this year. In 2023, at least 21 transgender people were killed by acts of violence. Chena Long was a 30-year-old black transgender woman and dance choreographer who was shot and killed on October 8th, 2023 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Jacob Williamson, an 18-year-old transgender man, worked at a local Waffle House and was beloved by his coworkers. He loved to sing and to draw. He was killed in Monroe, South Carolina on June 30th, 2023. Many similar crimes against my queer siblings we will never know about. Violence against this community is chronically underreported and misattributed. For the many of us with an unsupportive family, after death our identity is simply erased, buried in clothes we never bought, under a headstone carved with someone else's name. It brings a whole new meaning to the term dead name. The violence comes from inside the house too, knowing that when your loved ones look at you, they never see you. They see someone who doesn't exist anymore, if they ever existed at all. Every time you pass someone on the street, every time you talk to the cashier in the checkout lane, you hear that "yes, ma'am," or the "have a nice day, sir," and it's almost worse because you know those interactions aren't malicious most of the time. You know you'll never see that person again, so what's the point in trying to correct them? And the big stuff hurts. It hurts when someone you love, when someone you know loves you, won't recognize you for who you are. I'm fortunate enough that the vast majority of my loved ones respect me enough as a person to call me James and to recognize that I'm a man. But a lot of my transgender siblings don't have that luxury. And the little things build up. Every day, a denial of who you are. Every day, another comment, another sentence that digs a little deeper. And it wears you down, and it feels like there's nothing left. The rate of suicide in the general population is 1.3%, 13 people in every 1,000. The rate of suicide in the transgender population is around 30%, nearly 1 in 3. And those are the ones that succeeded. 82% of transgendered people have considered suicide. And all of these numbers skew very heavily towards the youth population. It's important to remember these statistics and these facts and acknowledge them, but I don't want that to be all that we get out of this today. I'm tired of the only conversation that we talk about with trans people being only about our issues and pain and violence. So instead today, let us celebrate the lives of our lost transgender siblings by starting a conversation. Let's have a conversation that celebrates gender and explore our genders together. Talking about and exploring your gender is not exclusive to trans people, though for, I think, obvious reasons, we tend to do more so than the average person. But before we do, I'd actually like to get a few vocabulary words in first. There will not be a test, probably. But when having a conversation, it's useful to have a common understanding of the words that you're going to use. Many of these terms may seem synonymous, and that's a fair point. You probably haven't had to think of a lot of these as separate concepts before, because they've largely been in alignment to what's considered the norm. Hopefully, there is a little handout in your order of service. We're going to be referencing that a little bit. This is the genderbread person. You can also see it up behind me. This is a short explanation of the many things that make up the gender-related parts of someone's identity. This handout was created by Sam Killerman at itspronouncedmetrosexual.com, which is a great educational resource for a variety of social justice issues. So, the vocab we're looking at. First is gender identity itself. This is your internal sense of gender based on how much you align with or don't align with what you understand the options for gender to be. Your sense of manliness, your sense of femininity, and for many people, there is a large overlap here with your greater identity and more general sense of self. Next is your gender expression. Expression is how you express yourself and express your sense of gender, and is not often but not always affected by not only how you perceive your own gender, but also how society perceives you or how you believe society will perceive you. This can include things like clothing, makeup, hair, and even your mannerisms, like how you walk, sit, or talk. And you might be asking, what do you mean you can sit with gender? You can. Next time you're relaxing with your friends, take a moment to take in how they're sitting. This isn't always a gendered thing, and it certainly rarely is consciously, but think about terms like man-spreading, or if you've ever been told to sit more ladylike. Consciously or not, whether we think about it or not, just how you exist in a space often gives off subtle gender markers to other people. And in a lot of queer communities, we tend to notice these a lot more because when you're talking to each other about how you can get other people to perceive you how you want to be, we talk about things like this. If you want to be perceived as a woman, you often might shrink in on yourself and take up less space because society expects that to be how women act. If you want to be perceived as a man, you might try and take up more space. Spread your legs a little bit, do the man spreading, because people will unconsciously be influenced to recognize you more like a man like that. There can also be cultural clashes when talking about gender expression because it tends to vary a lot based on your cultural background. And also included under this umbrella of gender expression, sometimes we include pronouns under this, sometimes it's a category of its own. But often we're going to include it here under expression. Next up, we have attraction, and I think this is going to be a little bit more familiar to at least this congregation. So, attraction or who you love. But those are two words with different meanings, love and attraction, which is why the queer community often actually breaks this down into two separate things, romantic and sexual attraction. The sort of traits you are attracted to in a romantic partner constitute your romantic orientation. We can use words like biromantic or heteroromantic as opposed to what you might be more used to of bisexual, heterosexual, homosexual. The sort of traits you're sexually attracted to constitute your sexual attraction, which is where you get those words you're a little more used to of bisexual, homosexual, heterosexual. For many people, their romantic and sexual orientation align, but it's not always the case. Someone might be asexual but biromantic, or heteroromantic but bisexual. Lastly, we have sex, but not like that. And like with attraction, we can break down sex into two parts, anatomical sex and sex assigned at birth. Sex assigned at birth is the easy one, and it's exactly what it sounds like. The sex someone was assigned at birth by their doctor, typically determined by the relative size of the peniclitoral organ and the presence or lack of a vaginal opening. Almost always male or female, though in some jurisdictions, intersex is a legally acceptable option when a child is ambiguous enough. More often, though, the doctor decides which parts would be easier to do plastic surgery on and simply correct the problem. Obviously, sometimes with or without the parent's consent, and obviously fully without the infant child's consent. Anatomical sex is the various sex characteristics that come together to define your biological sex. Things like body hair, breasts, genitalia, fat distribution, and hormones. We often think of this as a binary of male and female, maybe even a trinary if you're going to be progressive about it and throw in intersex. But the truth is, biological sex is a lot more complex than that, and it like most things in nature, truly exists on a spectrum, specifically what's called a bimodal distribution. And I would love to elaborate more on what I mean by that, but if I do that, that's going to be the entire rest of the sermon. So if you want to hear some more about that, hit me up after service. I'll be happy to talk a little bit more about how that works scientifically. For the majority of people, all of these things align in one of the typical configurations, or at least they kind of seem to. If your sex is female, your gender is woman, your expression is feminine, your pronouns are she, and you're probably attracted to men. But life is far more interesting when we start mixing and matching and thinking of things more in depth. Okay, that was a lot. Promise there will not be a quiz. But having a common vocabulary will make describing our own experiences easier and hopefully foster a better understanding of both our similarities and our differences. Maybe just separating things out like that has already got you asking some questions. The good news is that is the point. Congratulations, you've won the sermon. Your prize is an existential crisis. The bad news is that I'm going to keep asking you more questions, a lot more, and I don't have the answers to them. I mean, I have some answers, but they're my answers, not your answers, so you can't really cheat off of me. And a quick aside to my non-binary friends out there, I'm going to leave you out for a little while with these questions because this is about us, but it's not really for us, so if you want to play along, feel free to flip a coin and pick a side. So, what does it mean to be your gender? If you're a woman, what does that word mean? What is womanhood? If you're a man, same thing. What does that mean? What is the meaning of manliness? Or I guess I should say manhood there because earlier I said womanhood, and manliness and manhood are kind of synonyms, aren't they? That's partially rhetorical, but also not. I want you to think not only about the definitions of all of these words, but how they are, that the different words that you say are distinguished from each other, and how their definitions can vary. So I want you to all take a moment to yourself and answer that question. What does it mean to be a man or to be a woman? Do you fit that definition? And while we're on that, how do you define your gender? So if before we defined man in general, then what is your manhood specifically? Is there any definition, any difference in your definition of your gender in general? So your definition of woman versus the definition of your own womanhood? If there is, does it matter? With your definition of woman in mind, how far can someone be from that definition and still be a woman? Can someone not fit that definition at all and still be a woman? If so, which of you is wrong? If you've also considered, like I'm sure some of you have, the definition of whatever the other gender is, what if someone carries characteristics of both, or neither? And I don't want your politically correct or trying to be polite answers. I mean, you're answering in your head, come on. But I want you to think of how someone else's interactions with your definitions might change these definitions, if they do at all, or how your perception of that person might change as you try to define these things. If your definition of a woman is a list of qualities that a woman possesses, how many of them do you have to possess to be a woman? What are those qualities? Do all women you know possess them? Do you? What if a man has them? What if a man has more of those qualities than a woman does, yet unequivocally that man is a man and the woman is a woman? Here in our definitions of man and woman, we also start to run into some interesting intersections with feminism. If being a stay-at-home mom is an important part of your own womanhood, does that mean every woman needs to be a stay-at-home mom to be a real woman? Well, no, obviously, but even then, that still might be an important part of your own gender. A man doesn't need to be strong and outdoorsy to be a man, but it may still be an important part of some men's gender identity. As we explore our sense of gender, our definitions of different genders, we find that gender is vast and complex and overlapping. And that's okay. Gender is complex and messy, and we appreciate it in all of its weird, mushy glory. as you think about all of these things, you might start having some questions about yourself. One test I find incredibly useful in narrowing down my own personal feelings that's often shared within the transgender community as people are exploring their own sense of self is something called the magic wand test. If you could wave a magic wand and change something about your body and how you're perceived, if you could wave a magic wand and wake up a man or wake up a woman, how would you feel about that? Would you be disgusted, curious, excited? Maybe you'd be interested at first to explore the other side, because, it's something new. But maybe then you just want to be back in your own body. Maybe you just don't care that much about the body that your mind inhabits. It's just a vessel that you exist in. So now that I've said the word gender so much that it sounds weird when I say it, let's transition to the final part of my sermon. So I have here a large variety of readings, mostly poems, made by transgender and genderqueer people of all sorts. I'd like to share some of these with you to give you an idea of how my transgender siblings have answered some of these questions and just some of their expressions about their gender and their life experiences in general. And maybe with the premise of all of these questions and some of these different avenues of thought from these poems, we can find a deeper understanding of what gender can be. So our first poem today is called I Want to Be a Man by Lee, he, him. I want to be a man who embodies warmth. The soft caress of stubble against skin, the musky smell of Old Spice. I want to be a man who embodies empathy, letting the tears fall freely, caught in the tangles of my facial hair, fresh and new. I want to be a man who is not defined by the violence of his fathers, but the softness and kindness and strength of his mothers. Woman who fought, long and hard, to be seen with an ounce of the respect now bestowed on my masculinized body. I want to be a man. Our next poem I find particularly nice is an exploration of gender neutrality, or just generally something outside the binary of male and female, yet still in many ways interacting with those ideas and with other ideas. So this is Gender Neutral by a person that uses the handle online at I has a fandom, but does not have their name or pronouns listed. She, her, they. Not a woman or a girl, but a female dude guy person. Man as in, hey man, not man as in gent or boy. A drop-down menu reading gender, intentionally unopened, not unchosen, but deliberately left untouched. Neutral as a change room, as an outfit, neutral as a car that can rev but go nowhere. I am a boulder in a stream, sheltering fish from the current. A dragon hibernating on a hoard. Dark energy that cannot be seen but provides weight to the universe. A true clear blue so strong and sharp you can taste it. Hot chocolate with an icy bite of mint even as it seeps languid warmth to the bone. A still pool with unknown depths. A headbutt, not violent, but filled with whiskered affection. My gender is not neutral as beige, as gray, harmless and inoffensive. My gender is as neutral as a sheathed sword, an assumption of peace that will be backed by arms. Do not test me, do not force me, do not presume to prescribe me, and I will remain as a calm harbor in a storm. This next one is called Don't Call Me Mister, 'Cause I'm a T.S. Butch by Xanthra Philippa. And I have quite a few bit of things to preface this one. One, most of the other poems here are contemporary, just kind of an assortment of different poems talking about gender that I found online that I felt were good things to share with you here today. This one is actually an older poem from 1995, and it uses, the TS in our title here, uses what we now consider to be a somewhat outdated term. Most people in the transgender community, though I will say a lot of older people in the transgender community still use a variety of words that younger people might consider offensive, like transsexual or transvestite. don't call someone that out of the blue, but some people do still like to use those terms because those were the terms that they used when they were young, and so they're the terms they identify with. And so this is the case here, or don't call me mister because I'm a transsexual butch. And this poem in particular talks about some of the struggles that a transgender woman might have when her womanness is a masculine womanness. But the problem is when you have an identity like that, when you want to have a more mixed presentation, when you want to be seen as a masculine woman, you are often just seen as a man. And that's something I kind of empathize with because I am a queer man that kind of likes some feminine things, but I can dress fully masculine and still be seen as a woman by most people. So I tend not to explore my feminine side because I would rather be perceived as a boring, straight-laced man than as a woman. So, I don't wear dresses or makeup. Well, that doesn't make me mister, because I'm a TS butch. And so what if I don't have painted nails, high heels, or a purse? That doesn't make me mister either, because I'm a TS butch. You see, I wear pants, not a skirt, and an ordinary shirt, and that still doesn't make me mister, because I'm a TS butch. In the morning, when someone calls me on the phone and I answer in a deep and tired voice, that doesn't make me a sir or a mister, because I am what I am, and that's not a man, simply a butch, a TS butch. When I hold my TS femme tight at night under covers and kiss her neck, her shoulders, stroke her hair and her body, this is a TS butch touching her, this is a TS butch holding her. And even if I get scared sometimes, wondering what the fuck I am, just because I don't do all those femme things TS are supposed to do, or because I get depressed sometimes and question my identity, that still doesn't ever make me mister, because I'm a butch, a strong TS butch. So this next one is an untitled poem by another person that does not have their name posted online, although they use the pronouns they, he. I refer to myself with he, him pronouns in the same way that Christians use them to refer to God. Or in a similar way, perhaps, to an indistinguishable mass of plant matter and animal sinew that shambles around a small town in a landlocked state in the U.S. is referred to as the mystery man of Shangled Brook. It's a simplification of an incomprehensible being. Not an inaccurate simplification, but a simplification indeed. Our next one coming up is, I want to warn you about a little bit because it is a bit violent and expresses some of the more violent feelings towards the general state of our government and politics, but it's feelings that I think resonate with a lot of people that I think are important to be shared. I just don't want to surprise you with that, so be aware that this is a little heavier. So this poem is titled, My Gender is Whatever Makes Me Easiest to Kill, by someone who goes by the handle Rosebud Poet and uses the pronouns he and she. My gender is whatever makes me easiest to kill. My gender is breeding stock. Kill all men. Can't you just stay unobtrusive and neutral? The question cut apart in debate chambers. My ragged flesh and bones picked for statistics and arguments by vultures in suits who go home to 2 young wives, breathing out my same old screams to useless onlookers sitting in rows. You're disgusted by my blood on the floor, but unwilling to shoot down what's killing me slowly. What are the magic words I need to say to get you to care that I'm dying? My gender is a polite young woman in a pantsuit, long, long dead, forward-thinking and modern. Isn't it funny that she lived as a man? She wanted better opportunities. We dug up the body and passed it around the archives, and if you look here, you'll see the place where they cut out the most important parts. So sad to see such irreversible damage. So sad she never had children. So sad she was mutilated, but she was such a trailblazer. The first woman to put a bullet in a state senator's head. My gender is a bullet in a state senator's head. Shooting down vultures before they break my sibling's skin. Crippled, tranny, faggot, triple threat with a score to settle. With a gash down the center of its chest, spitting fire through pharmacy phone lines, never fucked someone who wasn't an enemy of the state. Never was your little girl sticking around till the bitter end, and triple dog dare you to come bash me yourself, you bloody-beaked coward. Come watch me be the monster you all say I am. My gender is whatever makes me hardest to kill. Our next one is by an anonymous user titled Gender on January 23rd, 2022 at 4:19 p.m. He, him, girl. Trans mask. Transsexual with intrinsic link to lycanthropy. A man as a puppy with a collar but no leash. The thing a poet flagellates to draw words from. A poet. A would-be final boy, girl, bloody beast. Can't run or hide or fight, but I could kill. A knife built for gutting that's only used for opening packages, but holds on to its aspirations as if it were making a promise. And our last one today is called Pretty by Jasper, who uses the pronouns they, he. And this one, I think, while it is more specific, is specifically talking about a transgender experience. I think there is a lot of people who feel that they might resonate with this, and I don't know how to describe exactly why, but I think you will understand when I read the poem. I am 8. It is my first communion. I wear a white dress and veil. I don't remember how I felt about it. I think I felt pretty. I am 10. I don't like dresses. I only wear them when forced to. I don't like my new sports bra. Am I pretty? I am 11. I wear the same hoodie every day. It hides my chest. I try makeup and straightening my hair. I don't feel pretty. I am 12. I buy crop tops and short shorts and paint my nails a dusty red and wear cheap Claire's earrings. I'm half pretty. I am 13. Dark circles under my eyes. I pick away at the black nail polish on my nails. I need to cut my hair again. Fuck you, I am not pretty. I am 14. I wear graphic tees with patched jeans and draw downturned eyeliner wings and still paint my nails black. I'm not pretty, but I do look good. So, that is really everything I have for you today. I know it's a little of an odd way of presenting things, but I hope that I've shared with you a lot of the experiences that different people in the queer community have, and I hope I've opened you up to considering gender as a more complex topic than you might have considered it already. Thank you.